My family used me as their free daycare service, so I made their vacation a permanent one. My family used me as their free daycare service, so I made their vacation a permanent one. It all started when I was 14, babysitting my little cousin Liam for what was supposed to be a simple afternoon. I remember sitting cross-legged on the carpet of our Dallas suburban home, watching him giggle at Tom and Jerry while I helped him build towers with Lincoln logs. That single afternoon of innocent fun somehow branded me as the family's go-to child care expert for the next 12 years of my life. My older sister, Sierra, was the first to exploit this newfound reputation. What began as innocent requests, "Clara, could you watch little Ava for just an hour while I grab groceries at Walmart?" quickly escalated into something far more sinister. That promised hour stretched into 6 when Sierra decided her Walmart run needed to include a full manicure and pedicure at the nail salon next door. I'll never forget that first real warning sign. I was sprawled on my bedroom floor, surrounded by broken Crayola crayons and scattered goldfish crackers, watching 3-year-old Ava color outside the lines of her Disney princess coloring book. My phone kept buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from my manager at Panera Bread, asking where I was for my scheduled shift. 23 missed calls. I'd lost my first real job because my sister decided her French tips were more important than my responsibilities. But that was just the beginning. My brother Dylan soon caught wind of my availability and started sending midnight texts about his twin boys, Mason and Logan, needing an emergency sitter whenever he and his wife wanted to catch a concert at the American Airlines Center or grab dinner at some trendy uptown restaurant. Emergency, he called it, like their date nights were life or death situations. The pattern was always the same. My phone would light up at 11 p.m. "Clara, huge favor. The babysitter canceled last minute. Can you take the boys? We're already dressed and ready to leave." What was I supposed to say? These were my nephews. I loved them, but I was drowning in their parents' selfishness, one emergency at a time. When I left for University of Texas at Austin, I thought distance would solve everything. I was wrong. Dead wrong. My dorm room at West Campus became their extended child care facility. Sierra would drive 3 hours just to bang on my door and dump Ava, sometimes with her younger brother Parker in tow for entire weekends. No advance notice, no asking if I had plans, just expectation wrapped in family obligation. The breaking point during college came during my anniversary dinner with my boyfriend Ryan at Cheesecake Factory. We were sharing breadsticks and talking about our future when my phone exploded with calls from Sierra. She was screaming about some fabricated emergency, demanding I come get the kids immediately. Ryan watched the romantic candlelight flicker across my conflicted face as I tried to balance the phone against my ear while apologizing to him. He set down his fork, looked me dead in the eyes, and said the words that still haunt me. "Clara, I can't do this anymore. You're never really here with me. You're always at their beck and call." That night, as Ryan walked away from our relationship, I realized my family wasn't just taking advantage of me. They were stealing my entire life, one babysitting session at a time. After graduation, I thought moving into my own apartment in Plano would finally give me the boundaries I desperately needed. I was working at a marketing firm downtown, finally building a real career, finally becoming the independent woman I'd always dreamed of being. My tiny one-bedroom apartment with its IKEA furniture and plants on every windowsill felt like freedom. That freedom lasted exactly 3 weeks. I came home from work one Tuesday to find my front door unlocked. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pushed it open, expecting to call 911 about a break-in. Instead, I found Ava and Parker sprawled across my living room floor, watching Paw Patrol on my TV while eating my leftover Chipotle directly from the containers. Toys were scattered across my coffee table like a tornado had hit Toys R Us. "Aunt Clara!" Ava squealed, running to hug my legs with sticky fingers. "Mommy said we could play here today." That's when I discovered the truth that made my blood run cold. My parents had secretly made copies of my apartment key and distributed them to Sierra and Dylan like I was some kind of community resource. My mother later defended it as family helping family, but it felt like the ultimate violation of my privacy and autonomy. The pattern became my nightmare routine. I dragged myself home after long days at the office only to find random combinations of kids camped out in my space. Sometimes it was just Ava coloring at my kitchen table. Other times I discovered all 4 kids, Ava, Parker, Mason, and Logan, had transformed my home office into a fort made from my work documents and throw pillows. My carefully organized life began crumbling. Important client presentations got delayed because I couldn't access my computer buried under pillow fort architecture. My boss, Mr. Whitman, started giving me concerned looks during staff meetings. The breaking point came when he pulled me aside after I'd missed another crucial deadline. "Clara," he said, adjusting his glasses with that disappointed expression I'd grown to dread. "You need to figure out your priorities. This job requires focus and reliability. Lately, you've been scattered." How could I explain that my family was systematically destroying my professional credibility? How could I tell him that my own relatives were sabotaging my success by treating my home like their personal daycare center? The financial burden was crushing me, too. My grocery bills tripled because 4 kids could demolish a week's worth of food in a single afternoon. My utility bills skyrocketed from constant TV watching and iPad charging. I was essentially funding a daycare I never agreed to operate. But the emotional toll was worse than the money. I stopped dating because no man wanted to walk into my apartment and find random children watching Frozen for the 100th time. My friendships withered because I could never make solid plans. There was always a chance I'd come home to find my space occupied by tiny humans I was expected to supervise. I started having anxiety attacks every time I approached my apartment building, never knowing what I'd find behind my own front door. The key my parents had given my siblings wasn't just opening my apartment. It was unlocking my growing resentment and rage. The worst part? My family acted like I should be grateful for the privilege. 3 months ago, everything changed forever. I woke up on what should have been a peaceful Saturday morning in my quiet apartment, planning to sleep in and maybe catch up on some Netflix shows I'd been meaning to watch. Instead, I heard voices in my living room, children's voices, laughing and chattering like it was Christmas morning. Still in my oversized Dallas Cowboys t-shirt and fuzzy slippers, I stumbled out of my bedroom, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. The scene that greeted me in my living room made my heart stop cold. Ava, Parker, Mason, and Logan were all sprawled across my couch, eating bowls of my Lucky Charms cereal while watching Saturday morning cartoons. Their little suitcases were lined up against my wall like they were checking into a hotel. "Aunt Clara!" Mason shouted, his face lighting up. "We're having a sleepover." That's when I saw it. The note on my kitchen counter that would change everything. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper steady enough to read it. The handwriting was Sierra's, but the content was pure family betrayal. "Clara, hope you don't mind watching the kids for a few weeks. We know you love spending time with them. We've all decided to take a family cruise to the Mediterranean. It's been planned for months. We knew if we told you ahead of time, you'd just make it difficult and try to talk us out of it. The kids know you'll take good care of them like you always do. There's $200 on the counter for expenses. Thanks. Love, the family." I read those words over and over, each time feeling like someone was pouring ice water directly into my veins. A few weeks. A Mediterranean cruise. Planned for months, without telling me, without asking me. They had literally left the country and abandoned their children with me like I was some kind of living nanny they could book without consultation. $200. 4 weeks of childcare for 4 kids. That wouldn't even cover groceries for a week, let alone everything else these children would need. "Are you making pancakes, Aunt Clara?" Ava asked, tugging on my t-shirt with syrup-sticky fingers. "Daddy said you make the best Mickey Mouse pancakes." That innocent question broke something fundamental inside me. These beautiful, trusting children had no idea their parents had just abandoned them. They thought this was a fun adventure, a special treat to spend time with their favorite aunt. They had no clue they'd been dumped like unwanted luggage so their parents could sip wine on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. Standing there in my living room, surrounded by suitcases and the evidence of my family's ultimate betrayal, I felt 12 years of suppressed rage finally reach its boiling point. They thought they were so clever, escaping to Europe while leaving me to clean up their parental responsibilities. They thought I'd just roll over and accept this like I always had before. But they made one crucial mistake in their calculation. 12 years of forced babysitting had taught me everything about child welfare laws, custody requirements, and exactly what authorities look for when investigating child abandonment cases. They wanted a vacation from their parental duties. I was about to make it permanent. 3 months ago, everything changed forever. It was a Friday evening, and I came home from work exhausted after pulling a 12-hour day. My apartment was supposed to be my sanctuary, the one place I could recharge before tackling the chaos of my job on Monday. Instead, I opened my front door to a scene that made my stomach drop. 4 suitcases sat neatly lined up against my wall. Ava's pink one with glitter stickers, Parker's dinosaur-themed roller bag, and 2 matching Spider-Man cases for Mason and Logan. The kids were sitting at my dining table eating bowls of macaroni and cheese like it was the most normal thing in the world. I froze in the doorway, my keys still in my hand. Ava looked up at me with a mouthful of noodles and said, "Hi, Aunt Clara. Mommy said you're taking care of us for a while. They went on a trip." I dropped my purse and rushed to the counter. That's when I saw it, a folded note propped up against my coffee maker, written in my sister's handwriting. "Clara, you're the best. We know you love the kids, and we really need a break. Don't worry, it's only for 2 weeks while we're in Europe. We'll bring you back something nice from Italy. Love, Sierra and Dylan." My hand shook as I read it over and over again. 2 weeks. They had abandoned their children in my apartment, without asking, without warning, without consent. Just a scribbled note and the expectation that I would sacrifice my life yet again. The kids were happy, oblivious, their little legs swinging as they ate. They thought this was a fun sleepover with their favorite aunt. My heart broke for them. None of this was their fault. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this would be the last time my family ever used me. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. Photos of the note. Photos of the suitcases. Photos of the kids sitting in my apartment with no parents in sight. I scrolled through my text messages and screenshotted every time Sierra or Dylan had dumped their children on me without permission. I created a digital trail that no one could deny. Then, with my hands still trembling, I dialed the number for Child Protective Services. The woman on the line was calm but firm as I explained everything. She asked me for the children's names, ages, and how long they had been in my care. She asked if I was their legal guardian. I told her no. She asked if I had given consent to take responsibility for them. Again, I said no. Within 2 hours, there was a knock at my door. 2 CPS caseworkers arrived with a Plano police officer. They introduced themselves gently, crouching down to speak to the kids at their level, asking if they were okay, if they'd eaten, if they felt safe. The kids nodded and smiled, thinking it was all some kind of adventure. When they asked me to explain, I handed them the note. The officer read it, his jaw tightening. He looked at me and said, "You did the right thing. This is abandonment." My apartment, which had been a prison for so long, suddenly became a courtroom. The officer took statements, the caseworkers documented everything, and the kids were gathered up with soft blankets and reassurances that they were going somewhere safe for the night. I knelt down and hugged each of them, whispering that none of this was their fault, that I loved them, that they were brave. Ava cried a little, but the caseworker soothed her, promising she'd get to keep her stuffed unicorn with her. Then the door closed behind them, and for the first time in years, I was completely alone in my apartment. The silence was deafening. The aftermath was swift and brutal. When Sierra and Dylan landed in Europe and tried to check in on the kids, they were met with voicemail after voicemail from CPS and the police. By the time they returned my calls, the authorities had already flagged them for child abandonment and neglect. Warrants were issued. Their dream vacation turned into a nightmare as they scrambled to get the first flight home, only to be greeted at the airport by police officers waiting at the gate. My parents were furious, but not at Sierra and Dylan, at me. They accused me of betraying the family, of airing dirty laundry to strangers, of ruining my siblings' lives. I stood there in my living room, listening to their angry voices on speakerphone, and for once, I didn't cry. I told them the truth. "You didn't give me a family. You gave me a job I never applied for. You didn't raise me to be a daughter or a sister. You raised me to be a free babysitter. And I'm done." The silence on the other end of the line was louder than their yelling had ever been. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. My apartment stayed spotless, my fridge actually held food for me instead of juice boxes and chicken nuggets, and I could come home without dreading what I might find. I reconnected with old friends. I even went on a date for the first time in years without canceling halfway through because of a family emergency. Most importantly, I slept. Really slept. 8 uninterrupted hours in my own bed, with no cartoons blaring in the background, no midnight tantrums, no sticky fingerprints on my coffee table. Sierra and Dylan are now in court battles they brought upon themselves. CPS has placed their kids in temporary foster care while the legal process unfolds. My parents still won't speak to me, but I've realized something: peace is louder than their voices ever were. For the first time in over a decade, my life belongs to me. They wanted a vacation from their responsibilities. I gave them exactly that, a permanent one.